I should have seen it coming. Every day I went to the gym. The same routine, the same people, the same predictable rhythm. Monday was chest, Tuesday back, Wednesday legs, and Thursday, well, Thursday was always when I felt invincible, when the weights in my hands felt like extensions of my arms rather than heavy metal. But on that Thursday, the world didn't just change, it snapped. I arrived at Iron Haven Gym around 6 a.m. Like always, the early light spilling across the cracked asphalt of the parking lot. The lot was empty, save for my beat-up Civic and a shopping cart someone had abandoned. That wasn't odd. People liked mornings, sure, but the gym always had a few dedicated souls before sunrise. The door swung open with a familiar squeak. The place smelled like chalk, sweat, and a faint tang of rust, the perfect smell for a gym rat. My shoes echoed against the rubberized floor, mingling with the metallic clatter of dumbbells hitting racks. I did my usual circuit, warm-up stretches, a few sets on the bench press, rows, deadlifts. I felt alive, in control, focused. But then, the TV above the front desk flickered on. Not the usual fitness channel, not music videos, not infomercials for protein powder. It was a news broadcast, chaotic, garbled. The reporter's voice cut through the gym speakers, trembling, panicked. Outbreak, rapidly spreading, avoid contact, dangerous, authorities overwhelmed. I froze mid-rep, the barbell cold in my hands. A shadow passed across the room behind me. At first, I thought it was a reflection from the glass, or maybe the janitor coming in early. But then I saw the movement again, too jerky, too unnatural. A man, or what used to be a man, stumbling, his skin pale and mottled, blood smeared on his torn shirt. His eyes, if they could be called eyes anymore, were blank, empty, fixated on something primal. I dropped the barbell. The crash echoed through the gym. My heart slammed against my ribs. Sweat didn't feel like preparation anymore. It felt like panic. I scrambled back toward the door. It was locked. Deadbolt. Panic surged, followed by that strange calm that comes when you know you're staring death in the face. I wasn't going to die in the parking lot. Not today. I darted behind the dumbbell rack. My eyes scanned the gym. Cardio machines lined the far wall, useless. Mirrors everywhere, reflecting the horror, multiplying it. But the free weights, the machines, the bars, those were tools, weapons. If I could just... I grabbed a heavy 45-pound plate and swung. The thing went down with a sickening thud. I didn't pause to think. I ran toward the office, slammed the door, and locked it. Phones were dead. Cell signal was non-existent. The news on the TV kept looping. Every screen, every radio, every whisper of broadcast was the same. The infection was everywhere. People weren't just sick, they were gone, replaced by something worse. I looked around the office. Desk drawers, filing cabinets, office supplies. I improvised. A metal stapler became a weapon. Chairs barricaded the door. My mind raced, heart hammering like it wanted to break through my ribs. Then I heard it. Not a growl, not a scream. A thump, a shuffle, a dragging sound against the floor. The thing outside was persistent. I couldn't stay here forever. I wasn't even sure how it got in, or how many more had followed. I needed a plan. Survival had never been about luck. It was about preparation, strategy, and brute force when necessary. I was strong, sure, but strength alone wasn't enough. I had to be smart. I remembered the gym layout, storage room in the back, filled with equipment and cleaning supplies. That could be a stronghold. It had metal shelving, supplies I could use, and it was enclosed. I had to move fast. Timing was everything. I waited for the shuffle to pause, took a deep breath, then sprinted. My feet pounded on the rubberized floor. I grabbed a baseball bat from the corner. The thing lunged. I swung. Metal met bone, or whatever was left of it. A wet snap. I didn't stop. I reached the storage room, slammed the door, barricaded it with kettlebells and a weight bench. My chest heaved. Sweat soaked my shirt, but this wasn't from exercise. This was pure survival. I sank to the floor, catching my breath. The lights flickered. The faint sound of moaning drifted from the gym floor. It wasn't one of them anymore. It was hundreds. I didn't know how many were out there, but I knew I couldn't stay put for long. I scavenged the storage room. Protein powders, energy bars, bottled water, cleaning chemicals, anything I could use as a weapon or a distraction. I packed a bag. Gym bags were perfect, strong, portable, compartmentalized. I learned quickly that the bat wasn't enough. I needed a contingency. By midday, the gym was silent, except for the occasional crash, the moan of something shuffling in the distance, or the glass cracking under the weight of a desperate survivor turned monster. I realized something. The gym, my sanctuary, was also a trap. I had a roof over my head, yes, but walls only worked if I stayed quiet. If I moved, I risked drawing attention. Food and water were limited. I'd have to scavenge, but where? The grocery store across the street? Too risky. Streets were filled with them now. Humans I used to see, jogging or walking dogs were gone, replaced by mindless predators. I needed a base, a plan, and tools. Then I noticed the pull-up bars, heavy ropes, resistance bands. If I was smart, I could rig traps, set alarms, create a defensive perimeter using the gym itself. The equipment that once built bodies could now be used to defend life. I smiled grimly at the irony. This was my arena now. Night fell. I set up a rotation. Listen, rest, barricade, sleep, repeat. One nap, 10 minutes, and then listen again. My muscles were screaming, but adrenaline drowned the fatigue. In that moment, strength wasn't measured in deadlifts. It was measured in the beats of my heart, in the silence between the moans, in the breath I took before action. By morning, I had a routine. Check the perimeter, fortify, gather supplies, rest. I had created small, improvised alarms with cans and ropes. I discovered that zombies were drawn to sound, but could be diverted with noise. Throw a weight in the other direction, and they followed it. Survival, I learned, was a game of anticipation, deception, and aggression when necessary. It was during one of these early routines that I heard a sound different from the moans. Is a human voice, faint, desperate, from across the street. I froze. Human meant danger. I couldn't risk it yet, but I took note. There might be others out there, maybe survivors, maybe not. The first week was chaos, learning, improvisation. I learned how to move quietly between machines, how to use the mirrors to see without exposing myself, how to turn dumbbells and barbells into tripwires and blunt weapons. Every night, I felt the hunger gnawing at me, the thirst parching me, but I survived. Every night, I realized that surviving wasn't just about strength, it was about discipline, observation, and the courage to move when the world seemed frozen in death. And then, on the 8th night, I heard the unmistakable sound, scratching, scratching, scratching at the office door. Not moaning, not dragging, smart, persistent, calculated. Someone or something was learning. I gripped my bat, tightened the straps on my makeshift armor, a towel under my jacket, a yoga mat wrapped around my forearms, and waited. My sanctuary was about to be tested. The first time I stepped outside the gym after the outbreak, the air hit me like a slap. It wasn't the cold or the stench of decay, though both were present. It was the silence. A thick, heavy silence, broken only by distant moans and the occasional crash of something falling. The streets I'd walked 1,000 times before, full of joggers, delivery trucks, and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery, were now empty, or worse, filled with shadows that weren't human anymore. I wrapped my backpack tighter over my shoulders, the bat in one hand, a makeshift sling of resistance bands over my other. My eyes darted constantly, scanning for movement. Every corner, every alley, every overturned car could hide a threat. The world had become a gym in its own right, a place to test not just strength, but reflexes, endurance, and mental toughness. The first stop was the grocery store across the street. I had observed it from the windows of Iron Haven, memorized the layout. The automatic doors were still slightly ajar, swinging in the breeze like a forgotten mouth waiting to swallow anything foolish enough to enter. I took a deep breath, counted to 3, and sprinted across the asphalt. Inside, chaos had already taken residence. Shelves were stripped bare, cans scattered, broken glass glinting in the fluorescent lights. The first sound I heard wasn't a growl or a shuffle. It was the snapping of something behind me. I spun, bat raised, and froze. A dog, or what used to be a dog, stared at me from the end of an aisle, its rib cage jutting through fur matted with blood. Its growl was low, guttural, unnatural. I didn't hesitate. Swinging the bat, I brought it down in a single arc. The sound of the impact echoed, final, brutal. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and forced myself forward. I moved quickly, grabbing anything useful: bottled water, protein bars, cans of beans, a crowbar. The dog, or what it had become, was just the beginning. I could feel the presence of more. Movement in the shadows, low moans. By the time I returned to the gym, my backpack heavy with supplies, the sun was already dipping below the horizon. The sky was a strange, bruised color, orange and purple, streaked with the black smoke rising from who knows where. I felt a pang of loneliness, an ache I hadn't allowed myself in the first week. Out there, everyone I had known was gone. Maybe dead, maybe changed. I pushed the thought away. Survival didn't leave room for mourning. Not yet. Back inside Iron Haven, I began organizing. I made zones. The storage room was the heart. The office was command. The main gym floor became a defensive corridor. I rigged simple traps with ropes and weights. A pull of a rope would send a 25-pound plate swinging like a pendulum. Tripwires clanged against cans. Every inch of space became a calculated advantage. I was learning, adapting. This was more than just surviving. I was building a fortress. But the world outside wasn't static, and neither could I be. On my second venture, I realized that survival required more than scavenging. It required mobility. The streets had too many threats, and staying in one place for too long was a death sentence. I needed a plan, a route, a way to move from one safe spot to another if the gym ever fell. I started mapping. Grocery store, pharmacy, gas station, small hardware store. I memorized the safest routes, the sightlines, the alleyways. I learned to listen. Not just to the moans, but to the wind, the creak of metal, the shuffle of tires abandoned in streets. Every sound told a story. Every shadow could be a threat or an opportunity. The first encounter with another human changed everything. I was at the pharmacy, scavenging what I could, when I heard a voice behind me, low, cautious, almost a whisper. "Hey, you alone?" I froze, gripping the crowbar in my hands. Yeah, I called, keeping my voice steady, controlled. A figure stepped forward, male, mid-30s, gaunt, clothes torn but clean enough to suggest he hadn't fully given up. He raised his hands, showing he wasn't carrying a weapon. "Name's Carl," he said. "I've been surviving on my own, but I thought maybe 2 heads are better than 1. I wanted to shoot him, or hit him, or run. Humanity in this world was either a blessing or a curse, and I couldn't tell which. But his eyes, they were alive. Not empty, not ravenous. Alive." "Travis," I said cautiously, "but you're careful. One wrong move." "I know," he interrupted. "I've been careful, and I've been watching you, Ironhaven. Smart choice. Solid barricades. I've got skills." We formed a tentative routine. Carl helped me fortify the gym further, building more complex traps. He scavenged in places I hadn't dared yet. We shared rations, stories, strategies. I noticed things about him. The way he analyzed the zombies' movement patterns, the way he could move quietly, the way he respected my rules. Respect wasn't trust, but it was a start. Days blurred into nights. Every venture outside brought new dangers. A group of zombies feeding on a corpse near a gas station, a collapsing bridge, a fire that sent the air thick with ash and smoke. Each time, we adapted, improvised, and survived. I learned to set distractions, throwing a dumbbell to lure them away, setting off a car alarm to clear a path. My gym training had taught me precision, endurance, explosive power, and now it saved lives in ways I never imagined. But the world had other lessons too. Carl and I had an encounter with a group of survivors who weren't friendly. They demanded our supplies. One of them carried a knife, the other a bat. Negotiations failed. We fought, brutally. I learned that human threats could be as deadly as the undead, maybe more so, because humans could think, strategize, and lie. By the time we returned to Ironhaven, bruised and exhausted, I knew one thing. Alliances were temporary. Loyalty was conditional. Survival was personal first, group second. By the 3rd week, the gym had become more than a stronghold. It was a base of operations, a classroom, and a training ground. I experimented with mobility drills, vaulting over machines, swinging from pull-up bars to racks, moving silently and quickly. Carl taught me new techniques for setting traps, barricades, and even improvising weapons from gym equipment. A yoga mat became a sling for a metal pipe. A resistance band could hold a door shut against significant force. The knocking at the gym door wasn't gentle. It was deliberate, heavy, like someone testing my patience or my courage. Carl stirred beside me, squinting in the dim light. "I hear it too," he said, voice low. "Could be another survivor, or trouble." I tightened my grip on the bat, muscles coiled like springs. Every instinct screamed at me, "Don't open the door." But curiosity, and maybe desperation, pushed me forward. I peeked through the small office window. A man, young, maybe late 20s, stood on the other side, clothes torn, backpack slung over his shoulder, but his eyes sharp, alive. "Name's Liam," he said through the door. I need help. I've been out there a week, trying to survive. I saw the barricades. Thought maybe you could use another set of hands." I studied him. Every instinct told me to be cautious. Every bit of logic whispered, humans were the real threat. But desperation was contagious. Carl leaned over whispering, "We could use the help, but we set the rules. You break them, we don't survive." I nodded. "Fine, but one misstep, one sign of weakness, and you're out. Understand?" Liam nodded. Crystal clear. The door opened, and we let him in. Within hours, we'd learned he was resourceful. He could climb, scavenge silently, and had an uncanny ability to notice weak points in the environment, doors that could be barricaded, windows that could be reinforced. He wasn't as strong as Carl or me, but in this world, brains and instincts could outweigh brawn. With 3 of us now, the gym became more than a stronghold. It was a base, a lab, a war room. We ran simulations, trained our bodies, set traps, and scouted more dangerous areas. The streets were worse than before. Abandoned cars, overturned trash bins, and the ever-present stench of decay. The undead had grown bolder, more aggressive. Carl and I had to constantly improvise. One day, we attempted a run to the hardware store 2 blocks away. Liam led the way, scouting for movement. We moved silently, shadows among shadows. Then, it happened. First major encounter. A small horde, 5 or 6 zombies, feeding on a stray dog. One caught sight of us. Instincts kicked in. "Throw it!" I hissed, grabbing a nearby brick. Liam and Carl understood instantly. We flung bricks and cans down the alley, drawing their attention. The creatures shuffled toward the noise. We sprinted, barreling through the door of the hardware store, hearts pounding. Inside, the smell of rust, wood, and dust was overwhelming. But we had found what we came for: hammers, nails, metal plates, and a small propane tank. The return to the gym was tense. Every shadow, every moan heightened our senses. We weren't just carrying supplies, we were carrying the weight of survival. Back at Ironhaven, we fortified further. Doors reinforced with metal plates, windows covered with chains and weight racks, tripwires set across corridors. Liam suggested a pulley system for dropping heavy equipment if anyone tried to breach the barricades. His creativity turned our gym into a deadly fortress. But with strength came tension. 3 people under one roof, constantly on edge, constantly hungry and exhausted, couldn't exist without conflict. Carl and I argued over strategy. Liam grew impatient with our cautious approach. One night, it exploded. "We can't just sit here," Liam shouted, slamming his fist on a weight bench. "We need to move, find more supplies, maybe even other survivors. We can't survive by hiding forever." I stared at him, chest heaving, bat in hand. "And get ourselves killed? You think the streets have changed? You think the zombies care about bravery? We survive smart, or we don't survive at all." Carl's voice was a low growl. "Both of you are right. We need to find a balance, but we can't let impulse get us killed." The argument ended with silence, but tension lingered, heavier than any barbell we'd ever lifted. Days passed, and we adapted. Liam's push for mobility had merit. We started mapping escape routes beyond the immediate blocks, noting rooftops we could access, alleys we could navigate, and stores that might still hold supplies. Our gym became a command center. My body ached constantly from training, lifting, and sprinting, but my mind was sharper than ever. Then came the horde. Not small, not 5 or 6, hundreds, pouring from the surrounding streets like a river of death. We saw them from the gym windows, a tide of movement, groaning, swarming. Panic flared, but training kicked in. "We defend or we die," I said. Carl and Liam nodded. Weapons ready, traps armed, barricades reinforced. The first wave hit, dumbbells swung like wrecking balls. Resistance bands snapped under weight. We moved like a single unit, each of us covering a quadrant. The smell of sweat, blood, and metal filled the gym. I felt alive, every nerve firing, every muscle responding. Hours passed. The horde thinned, but never fully disappeared. Exhaustion clawed at me, but I couldn't rest. Carl had been bitten not badly, but enough that it worried me. We treated it, barricaded him in a safer room temporarily, but the reality hung over us. In this world, one mistake could cost everything. The aftermath left the gym scarred. Blood smeared on the walls, weights scattered across the floor, broken windows covered with metal. But we had survived. Again. Each victory, small or large, hardened us. We weren't just survivors, we were fighters, strategists, soldiers in a war without rules. By the fourth week, I realized something. Iron Haven wasn't enough. The city was collapsing around us. Supplies were dwindling. Humans were getting bolder. Zombies, hungrier. If we wanted to survive long term, we had to expand, explore, and take risks we had avoided before. And that's when the idea hit me. What if we fortified more than just the gym? What if we created a network of safe zones, moving from one stronghold to another, training, scavenging, surviving in a way no one else could? It would be dangerous. It would be terrifying. But it was the only way forward. I shared the plan with Carl and Liam. Both hesitated. Fear was natural, but survival demanded more than caution. "We do this," I said, "or we die here, waiting for the next horde." They nodded. Agreement, silent but firm. The next phase had begun. Iron Haven would remain our home base, but it was also a launch point. From here, we would strike, scavenge, and expand. The streets outside Iron Haven had grown stranger, more dangerous. The city that had once thrummed with life now groaned with decay and death. Windows were shattered, cars overturned, and the occasional fire sent smoke curling into the sky like a warning. Yet, it was no longer enough to stay confined within the gym. Supplies were running low. Our routines, once efficient, had to evolve. I led the plan. Carl and Liam followed my lead, silent but alert, moving like trained athletes, muscles tensed and ready. We had developed a rhythm: check corners, scan rooftops, listen for movement, move quickly and quietly. Every step was calculated. Every breath was measured. The first stop was a small warehouse a few blocks from the gym. From a distance, it looked abandoned, but the moans of the undead filtered through the broken walls. It was a gamble. Liam wanted to bypass it entirely, suggesting a safer route, but I knew we couldn't avoid it forever. Supplies inside were essential: tools, canned food, even tarps and rope that could reinforce Iron Haven. We approached, weapons ready. My heart pounded not from exertion, but anticipation. The door was massive, rusted, and heavy. Carl pried it open, while Liam and I covered him. Inside, darkness swallowed us. The smell hit first: mold, rot, and something worse. Movement flickered at the edges of the dim light. Then they appeared. Not one, 2 dozens. They weren't slow this time. These were fast, desperate, driven. I swung the bat. Metal clashed against bone, or what was left of it. Carl drove a barbell into a creature, sending it crashing into a stack of crates. Liam slashed with a machete he'd scavenged days before. The warehouse became chaos incarnate: shadows, screams, the smell of blood and metal. Hours later, we emerged victorious but shaken, supplies in hand, clothes torn, sweat mingled with grime. Carl's arm was bruised, Liam had a gash on his thigh, and I could feel every joint screaming in protest. But we survived. And survival, I realized, wasn't just about strength, it was about endurance, adaptation, and sheer willpower. Back at Iron Haven, we reinforced the gym further. Windows were now barred with metal shelving, doors layered with chains and locks. Every trap was tested, every alarm improved. Liam rigged a system, using weights and pulleys. If anyone tried to breach, the metal plates would swing, the tripwires would snap, and the clanging would warn us. But survival wasn't just physical anymore. The mental strain began to show. Carl grew quieter, more reflective. Liam became impatient, restless, always looking for the next venture, the next risk. And me? I felt the constant pressure building, knowing that any mistake could cost us our lives. One night, as I patrolled the barricades, I caught movement outside, figures approaching, but different. Human? Maybe. Armed. My heart raced. Carl and Liam joined me at the windows. The figures hesitated, then raised their hands, calling out, "Travis, Carl, Liam, we're survivors." I studied them carefully. Another group of humans meant potential allies, but also potential threats. Trust was fragile in this world. We let them in after careful negotiation. They brought supplies, knowledge of other safe zones, and news. The city beyond our blocks was collapsing faster than we thought. Weeks passed. The gym had become a hub, a fortress, a center of operations. We trained, scouted, fought, and survived. But we couldn't stay put forever. Supplies were dwindling faster than we anticipated. Food, water, even basic medical supplies had become precious commodities. One wrong venture outside, and we'd be feeding the horde, or worse, a human predator. It was early morning when the alarm went off, a tripwire near the front entrance rattling the metal plate. I was up instantly, bat in hand. Carl and Liam were at the windows, scanning the street. "Holy hell," Carl muttered. I looked outside. Hundreds, maybe more. The horde had grown exponentially, spilling into the street like a tidal wave of decaying flesh and hunger. They weren't just moving, they were coordinating, in a way. I'd never seen that before. This was an assault. "Block the doors!" I shouted. We slammed everything against the entrances, weights, benches, chairs, anything that could hold, but I knew it wouldn't last, not for long. The first wave hit. Metal plates swung, chains rattled, dumbbells flew from pulleys. The sounds were deafening. Thuds, cracks, groans, screams. I swung the bat with every ounce of strength I had. Carl fought with a metal pipe, Liam with his machete, moving like a ghost through the chaos. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time became meaningless in the fight for survival. Each swing, each strike, each barricade held for a heartbeat longer than the last. And then, a horrifying realization. The horde wasn't stopping. It kept coming, relentless, endless. "We have to move," I yelled, blood and sweat blurring my vision. "We can't hold them forever." Carl and Liam nodded. We had planned for this possibility, a secondary escape through the rooftop and across the alley, but the horde had us partially surrounded. Every exit was a risk. "On my mark," I said, scanning for the safest path. 3, 2, 1. We bolted, leaping over machinery, sliding under swinging weights. The gym became a gauntlet. The sound of snapping bones and the stench of decay filled every corner. I could feel them close, brushing against me, mouths snapping. Panic threatened to overtake discipline, but we kept moving. Rooftop to rooftop, alley to alley, we fought like shadows, our weapons improvisational extensions of our will to live. When we finally landed on the far side, gasping for air, bruised, battered, and bleeding, I realized something. We weren't just strong. We were survivors, forged in fire, steel, and blood. But survival came with cost. Carl had taken a bite, not deep, but enough that it worried me. Liam's leg was scraped, bleeding, slow but steady. I wiped sweat from my eyes, trying to steady my shaking hands. We had escaped the immediate threat, but the city had marked us. The horde wasn't defeated. It was learning, adapting, and watching. And we knew then, without saying it aloud, that Iron Haven could never be more than a temporary fortress. The following days were spent regrouping. We scavenged what we could from less crowded streets, reinforced our temporary positions, and planned. The weight of our survival pressed down on us like a barbell loaded beyond capacity. Each decision, each step, each choice could mean life or death. One night, as we huddled in a ruined apartment overlooking the city, Liam spoke quietly. We can't just survive. We need to fight back. Take the city, take control, or we'll just be running forever. I nodded, understanding. Survival wasn't enough anymore. Strength and strategy alone wouldn't win this. We needed initiative, ingenuity, and ruthless efficiency. Carl, quiet as ever, added, "We've trained. We've fought. We know the streets, the patterns, the weaknesses. We can do this, but it'll cost us." We had no choice. Sitting, hiding, surviving day to day, that wasn't enough. The horde outside Ironhaven wasn't just growing, it was learning. We were at a crossroads. Adapt, fight, or die. I gathered Carl and Liam on the rooftop of a crumbling office building overlooking the city streets. From this vantage point, the chaos below looked almost beautiful in a grotesque way. Fires burned in abandoned buildings, smoke curling into the sky. Cars were wrecked, turned over, their windows shattered like jagged teeth. And between it all, movement shuffling, stumbling, gnawing, endless. "We take control," I said, voice firm. "We hit them where they're strongest, disrupt their numbers, reclaim the streets near the gym. It's the only way we survive long term." Carl didn't speak immediately. His arms were folded, eyes narrowing at the chaos below. "It's risky. They've grown organized, or maybe it's instinct. Either way, it's a lot." Liam's jaw tightened. "I'm in. We either die hiding or we die fighting. Let's do this." I nodded. "We do it smart. We set traps, bait them, control their movement, precision, speed, and force." We spent the next day preparing. Using rooftops, alleyways, and barricaded streets, we created choke points. Dumbbells and metal plates rigged as swinging traps, pulleys attached to chains to drop heavy weights on incoming hordes. The city itself became a gym, a training ground for survival. Night fell. The first wave came like thunder. Zombies poured into the streets, a living river of death. But this time, we weren't passive. We moved like shadows, silent but lethal. Dumbbells smashed skulls. Pulley traps swung with deadly precision. The streets became our arena, our weights, our battleground. Hours blurred. Sweat soaked my shirt. Blood smeared across my forearms. Every step was a calculated strike. Every movement honed by instinct and practice. Carl fought like a machine. Liam moved like a ghost. And I was the anchor, leading, calculating, adapting. We were winning, slowly, but the toll was heavy. Carl's bite from before had worsened, infected, but not yet turning. His strength faltered at moments, forcing Liam and me to cover more ground. I realized then that survival wasn't just about fighting the undead. It was about managing the living, managing ourselves. By dawn, the streets near the gym were ours. Bodies littered the roads, traps still swinging, the silence settling over a reclaimed territory. Exhausted, but alive, we surveyed our work. "This is just the start," I said. "We've pushed them back here, but the city is bigger. We take one street at a time, one building at a time, precision and patience." Carl nodded, pain etched into his features. Liam grinned, wild and exhausted. "We've got this," he said, and for the first time in weeks, I believed him. But survival came with a moral cost. One street we cleared, we found survivors trapped, terrified. Some were grateful. Some tried to steal from us. Some attacked us. Every encounter reminded me that humanity could be more dangerous than the undead. Trust was fragile, and every choice weighed heavily. By the time night fell again, we had fortified our reclaimed territory. The gym remained the heart, the city our arena. But nothing weighed heavier than the choice I now faced. Carl. The bite he had sustained weeks ago was no longer minor. Fever burned through him, his strength waning with each hour. His usual calm precision was replaced by exhaustion, frustration, and moments of disorientation. Liam and I tried to help him, improvised treatments with what little we had, but the truth was inescapable. The infection was winning. Carl pulled me aside one night, voice low, hoarse. I don't want to be one of them, he whispered. If it happens, you have to finish it. I gripped his shoulder, feeling the weight of his words. This wasn't a workout. There were no reps, no second chances. Survival meant making impossible decisions. We fortified the gym for the inevitable assault. Our reclaimed streets were lined with traps, barricades, and makeshift alarms. Liam set up a perimeter that gave us early warnings. I went over every route, every choke point, every escape plan. If the horde came, we would fight, and we would fight smart. And then it came. The horde wasn't just hundreds anymore. It was thousands. From every angle, the moans and groans rose like a tidal wave. They poured into the streets, relentless, chaotic, organized in their own horrifying way. The smell hit first decay, rot, and death, choking us before the fight began. The gym became a fortress of steel and sweat. Dumbbells and barbells swung, weighted traps crashed down, pulleys dropped heavy objects with precision. Liam moved like a shadow, setting traps as I covered him. Carl, despite weakness, held his post, striking when he could, buying us seconds we desperately needed. Hours passed. Pain, blood, exhaustion all blurred into a single rhythm. We fought as one, a trio hardened by weeks of survival, experience, and relentless training. But the horde pressed on. There were too many. We were running out of space, ammunition, and strength. And then Carl faltered. "Go! I'll hold them!" he shouted, falling to one knee, his eyes fierce despite fever and infection. "You survive." I shook my head. "No, we're not leaving you." His hand was firm on my arm. "It's the only way. You can't save me. Not now. Finish it, Travis. For me." The choice slammed into me harder than any weight I had ever lifted. But there was no hesitation. I nodded. Liam understood instantly. We couldn't argue, couldn't waste time. I carried Carl to the side room, whispered a goodbye, and followed the plan we had rehearsed for the worst. Barricades reinforced, traps armed, paths cleared. The fight wasn't over, but the decision had been made. The horde breached the outer defenses. Chaos erupted. Screams, crashes, and the sickening sound of flesh meeting metal filled the air. Liam and I moved like shadows, striking, blocking, improvising. Every swing, every push, every maneuver mattered. I felt my body scream in protest, muscles tearing, lungs burning, but I pushed, driven by willpower and the memory of Carl's sacrifice. Hours later, the streets were quiet. Bodies lay strewn across barricades, traps, and streets. Smoke curled from fires we had started as distractions. Liam and I were bruised, battered, and bloody but alive. Carl was gone. I collapsed against the gym wall, heart hammering, mind racing. The weight of survival, the cost of leadership, and the horror of loss pressed down like a barbell I couldn't drop. Liam knelt beside me, silent, exhausted, grief mirrored in his eyes. We did it," he said quietly. "For now." The city groaned. Smoke and ash hung in the air like a permanent fog, and the moans of the horde drifted across the streets, faint but insistent. The horde we had fought off weeks ago had not vanished. They had been regrouping, learning, growing in number, and now they were coming for us again. I stood on the rooftop of Iron Haven, bat in hand, surveying the streets below. Liam was beside me, machete ready, eyes scanning, muscles tensed. Every inch of our territory had been fortified, traps laid with painstaking care, every escape route memorized. But the horde coming now, it felt endless. "This is it," I said, voice low. "We either make it or we die here. No half measures." Liam nodded. "We've survived worse. We can do it." The first wave hit like a tidal wave. Thousands of undead spilled into the streets, crashing into barricades, swinging metal and makeshift traps. I moved like a shadow, bat arcing, traps triggering, improvised alarms sounding. Liam struck from the side, cutting through the masses with lethal precision. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time no longer had meaning. My body screamed. Every muscle ached, lungs burned, blood coated my hands and arms. Yet, I kept moving. Swing, block, push, pull, every motion calculated, honed from weeks of survival, training, and desperation. Then came the moment I had been dreading. One corner of the barricade gave way. Zombies surged through, overwhelming our defenses. Liam shouted, striking as many as he could, but I knew it wouldn't hold. "Fall back!" I yelled. "To the roof!" We fought our way upward, using ropes, ladders, and our knowledge of the gym's structure to gain high ground. From here, we had the advantage. The horde could swarm below, but we controlled the attack. I triggered pulleys, swinging heavy metal bars into their midst. Dumbbells flew from improvised catapults. Every strike, every swing, every trap was lethal. Hours blurred again. Exhaustion threatened to pull me under. Liam was bleeding, leaning against the wall for support. I could feel my strength faltering, but I refused to give in. Survival had taught me that willpower outweighed muscles, that determination could outlast death itself. And then I saw it an opening. The horde had thinned in one sector, distracted by a trap we had set earlier. If we moved now, we could create a controlled retreat, funneling them into a kill zone, and then escape the city in one coordinated push. I grabbed Liam. "We go now. Follow my lead." We ran, leaping across rooftops, sliding down ropes, moving like shadows. The traps we had set detonated behind us, swinging weights and tearing through the mass of undead. The streets echoed with screams, crashes, and the sickening sound of bodies hitting metal. By dawn, the city streets were eerily silent. Smoke drifted through the ruins. Bodies, undead and otherwise, littered our path. We had survived. Again. But the cost was written across our bodies, our faces, and in the silence that followed the chaos. We returned to Iron Haven, battered, bloodied, exhausted but alive. The gym, our fortress, had stood. It bore the scars of our battle, but it was still ours. I sank onto a weight bench, gripping my bat, feeling the ache in every muscle. Liam sat beside me, silent. Neither of us spoke immediately. The weight of what we had survived and what we had lost pressed down on us like a barbell loaded beyond capacity. Finally, I spoke. "We did it. We survived. And maybe we can build something here. Not just survive, but live. Reclaim a part of the world that was stolen from us." Liam nodded. "We've got the strength. We've got the skills. And now, we've got hope." The sun rose over the ruined city, light spilling across the broken streets, illuminating the destruction and the possibility. Iron Haven stood battered but unbroken, a symbol of endurance, resilience, and willpower. And for the first time since the outbreak, I allowed myself to believe in something beyond survival. Strength had carried me this far, but courage, strategy, and the refusal to give up that was what would carry me forward. The city was still dangerous. The horde would return, humans would continue to test our limits, and the world outside remained chaotic and merciless. But we had survived. We had endured. And we had reclaimed a piece of it. Iron Haven was more than a gym. It was our arena, our home, our sanctuary. And as I lifted a dumbbell, slowly, feeling the burn in my muscles, I realized that survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about proving, over and over, that we could fight, endure, and rise again. The world had tested me, weighed me down, and pushed me to my limits, and I had lifted it, one rep, one step, one day at a time.